I was 67 years old when I learned that the greatest wounds don't come from strangers, but from the people whose faces you once kissed goodnight. People you raised, protected, and loved with every ounce of your being. At 67, I thought I had survived it all. Wars in my workplace, health scares, the deaths of friends, the pain of losing my parents. I thought betrayal belonged to the young. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. It all began one Friday in late September, just a week after my retirement party. The company had given me a gold watch. My coworkers clapped and shook my hand. And everyone said, "Congratulations, you earned it. Go live the peaceful life now." Peaceful. That was the word they all used. I even believed it for a moment. But the truth is, life doesn't hand you peace just because you've crossed the finish line of your career. Sometimes it throws the ugliest test of all right in your lap when you're least prepared. That Friday morning, I found myself driving to a small house at the edge of town. The sign outside read in chipped gold letters, "Tarot and Palm Readings by Martha." I hadn't been there in years. My late mother used to swear by Martha. Back when I was a boy, she dragged me along to get readings about the farm, about my father's health, about whether we should buy new cattle or not. I never believed much in it. Numbers and hard work made more sense to me than cards and candles. But something inside me, maybe curiosity, maybe loneliness, pushed me to step inside that old house that day. Martha was still there, older now, her hair a river of silver falling down her shoulders. She greeted me like no time had passed, sat me down at her little round wooden table, and began shuffling her deck. The room smelled of sage and lavender. Candles flickered against the wallpaper, throwing long shadows across the shelves lined with crystals and jars. She laid down the first card. The tower, a tall building struck by lightning, people falling from it. My stomach twisted. "The tower means upheaval," she whispered, her voice raspy yet steady. "Your foundation will be shaken. Life as you know it destroyed." I chuckled nervously. "Martha, I just retired. What could possibly shake me now? My hardest days are behind me." She ignored my protest and laid down another card. The 10 of Swords. A man lying face down with 10 blades piercing his back. Her eyes locked on mine. Betrayal. The deepest kind. But not from an enemy. I frowned. "Then who?" She placed a third card slowly, almost reluctantly. The Page of Cups reversed. A card of youth, immaturity, a child. Her lips pressed together. "It will come from someone of your blood. A child who should honor you, but instead dishonors you." I shifted uncomfortably in my chair. My only daughter flashed in my mind. My pride. My miracle. The girl I had worked 2 jobs to raise. The one I had bought books for when I couldn't afford new shoes for myself. I shook my head. No, not her. She wouldn't. Martha cut me off, her voice sharper. "Do not be blind. Blood is not always thicker than water. Sometimes it is thinner than lies." Her words clung to me as I left, even as I laughed them off in the car. Betrayal? From my daughter? Impossible. She was 29, ambitious, brilliant, building a fintech startup with her college friends. She had always been headstrong, yes, but also full of fire. I admired that about her. I had even emptied $100,000 from my retirement savings to give her that chance. It wasn't easy. That money had been my safety net, my cushion for the years ahead. But I told myself, she is my daughter. If I don't believe in her, who will? That evening, I sat on the porch sipping iced tea, watching the sun dip behind the trees. My wife, Mary, joined me. She had the same concerned look she always wore whenever the topic of our daughter came up. "She needs more funds," she said gently, sitting beside me. I blinked. "More? Mary, I've already given her 100,000. That's my life's work right there. What more does she need?" She says the investors are asking her to scale quickly. If she delays, she could lose her partner's trust. You know how competitive things are these days. I rub my temples. "Do you realize what you're asking? That's not spare change. That's our retirement, our survival money." Mary's eyes softened, almost pleading. She's our only child. If we don't support her, who will? You've always said family comes first. And she was right. I had always said that. So when my daughter came home later that night, wearing a sleek black dress and perfume I didn't recognize, I forced myself to swallow my doubts. She hugged me tightly, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Daddy, this is it. This is a chance of a lifetime. Don't you trust me?" Trust. That word again. Heavy as a stone. "Of course I trust you," I said, my voice catching. Her smile lit up like the 4th of July. She ran out the door where a shiny car waited. Through the window, I spotted a champagne bottle in the back seat. Her friends were laughing, the kind of laughter that had nothing to do with business meetings. One of them, a tall man with slick back hair, looked at me with an expression I can only describe as mocking, like he knew something I didn't. That night, as I lay in bed, Martha's words echoed again. Not an enemy, someone of your blood. Over the next few weeks, cracks began to appear. My daughter stopped joining us for dinners. She answered my calls with hurried voices, often saying, "Dad, I'm in a meeting," before hanging up. Her mother excused it all, saying she was busy, that startups consumed every waking moment. But then I stumbled upon her credit card bill left on the counter one morning. Thousands spent on online shopping, luxury brands, fine dining. When I confronted Mary, she said, "It must be company expenses, software licenses, maybe." But I wasn't naive. I had lived long enough to know what software costs. And it isn't Gucci handbags or 5-star hotel rooms. Then one evening, walking down the hallway past her room, I froze. Through the half-closed door, I heard her voice, sharp and impatient. "Don't worry, I'll get more from him. He always folds. He always trusts me." My chest tightened. Him. Me. I leaned against the wall, my knees trembling. The betrayal wasn't a thunderclap. It was a slow leak, and I could feel the water rising. That Sunday, we gathered around the table for dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, corn, a family tradition. I thought maybe we could talk things out calmly. So I began carefully, carving my meat. "How's the fintech business coming along?" My daughter's fork froze midair. She set it down hard. "Why are you interrogating me? Don't you trust me?" I blinked. "I'm just asking." "You're always doubting me," she snapped. Mary tried to step in, but my daughter's eyes were blazing. "You think I don't notice it? You never believed in me. Never." I stared at her, my throat dry. "Sweetheart, all I want is honesty." Her chair screeched against the floor as she shoved it back. Her hands shook, her lips trembled, and then she spat the words that cut me deeper than any knife. "Stay out of my life, old man, or I swear I'll call the police next time you interfere." The room went silent. My fork slipped from my hand. Mary gasped, reaching for her, but I raised my hand. "Let her go." And she did. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I sat there in silence, staring at the food I couldn't eat. My heart felt hollow, like someone had scooped it out with a spoon. That night, sitting alone in the dark, Martha's prophecy replayed in my head. Betrayal from your own blood, not theft of money alone, but theft of love, of respect. I realized then it wasn't something that was going to happen. It had already begun. And that, my friends, was the night I understood what real betrayal feels like. The night my only daughter turned her back on me. But I had no idea this was just the beginning. What came next would test not just my heart, but my very survival. The morning after that stormy dinner, I sat at the kitchen table staring at a cold cup of coffee. My wife moved quietly around the kitchen, avoiding my eyes, as though silence might patch the cracks that were spreading through our family. But silence never heals. It only deepens a wound. I tried to read the newspaper, tried to focus on the stock pages out of old habit, but the words swam. My daughter's voice replayed in my mind like a broken record. "Stay out of my life, old man, or I'll call the police." Police, my own flesh and blood, threatening me like a stranger. When Mary finally sat across from me, she whispered, "You pushed her too hard." I stared at her, stunned. "Me? Mary, did you hear what she said to me? Your daughter threatened to treat me like a criminal in my own home." She rubbed her hands together, eyes darting. She's stressed. You know how ambitious she is. You can't take every word to heart. I clenched my fists under the table. Stressed or not, you don't talk to her father like that. Not after everything I've done for her. Not after I emptied my savings to give her a future. Mary's silence was worse than words. It felt like betrayal's shadow had already begun to fall across the entire house. A week passed. My daughter came home less and less. When she did, she was dressed in designer clothes, carrying bags I knew she couldn't afford on her own. She would breeze through the house like it was a hotel lobby. No warmth, no conversation. Just orders barked at her mother. One Friday night, I heard her coming around midnight. Curious, or maybe suspicious. I peeked through the curtain. She wasn't alone. The slick-haired man I had seen before stepped out of the car with her, his arms slung casually around her shoulders. They stumbled, laughing, clearly drunk. She brought him inside, past the very walls I had built for her. I stayed in the dark, heart pounding. I heard glasses clinking in the kitchen, giggles, a whispered voice that wasn't hers, then footsteps up the stairs, and then silence. I sat in my chair until dawn, staring at the wall, my insides churning. I wanted to burst in to demand answers, but my pride chained me to that seat. I told myself, she's an adult. Maybe it's none of my business. But deep down, I knew my daughter wasn't just drifting away from me. She was diving headfirst into a world where I didn't belong, where I wasn't even respected. A few days later, Mary handed me a stack of letters. Bills, she muttered. I flipped through them. Electricity, water, property taxes. And then one envelope caught my eye, a loan statement. My name was printed in bold letters at the top. Confused, I opened it. My hands trembled as I scanned the lines. It showed a loan of $50,000 taken just last month. My signature was at the bottom, but I knew instantly I had never signed it. My stomach dropped. Mary, did you? She froze, her lips pressed tight. Then finally she whispered she needed it. The world seemed to tilt. You forged my name? Tears filled her eyes. She begged me, said she was desperate. She swore she'd pay it back in weeks. I thought if it was for her future, it was worth it. I slammed my hand on the table so hard the cups rattled. Worth it? That's fraud, Mary. That's a crime. Do you realize what you've done? What she's made you do? Mary sobbed silently. She's our child. What choice did I have? That night, I didn't sleep. I walked the halls of my own house like a stranger, haunted by the echo of my wife's words. What choice did I have? It wasn't just my daughter betraying me now. It was my wife, too, the woman I had trusted for 40 years. The following Sunday, we had another family dinner. Or at least we tried. My daughter arrived late, heels clicking on the floor, sunglasses still on despite the dark. I waited until the plates were served before I said quietly, "We need to talk." She sighed dramatically, pulled out her phone and muttered, "Not now." I reached across and snatched the phone from her hand. She gasped, "What the hell, Dad?" "Enough." I barked. I want the truth. About the money. About the loan in my name. About where all of it is going. Because it sure as hell isn't going into any fintech company. She glared at me, fire in her eyes. Then, slowly, a smirk curled across her lips. "So you found out." My chest tightened. "Found out what?" "That you're just a wallet," she said coldly. "That's all you've ever been. Don't fool yourself into thinking I owe you loyalty. You gave me money, I took it. That's the transaction. End of story." My wife gasped, "Honey, don't." But my daughter leaned forward, her voice venomous. "Do you know what investors call people like you? Dead weight. You're retired, Dad. Irrelevant. Nobody cares what you think. The only thing you had left to offer was money. And I already took that." The words sliced through me like glass. My hands shook. "I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you, and this is what you give me." She shrugged. "I didn't ask to be born. You chose that. So don't act like I owe you a debt for doing your job as a parent." Silence. The kind that feels like a graveyard. Mary was crying softly, whispering, "Please stop, please." But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Finally, my daughter stood, grabbed her coat, and said casually, "Oh, and Dad, don't threaten me again about money. Because if you do, I'll make sure the cops hear about how you pressured me. And trust me, a retired old man versus a young woman, they'll believe me." She walked out, slamming the door. The echo rang in my ears long after she was gone. That night, I sat outside on the porch, the autumn wind cutting through my sweater. Betrayal had a weight I'd never known before. Heavy, suffocating. I thought of Martha's tarot reading again, the tower, the 10 of swords, the page of cups reversed. Every card, every word had been true. But what she hadn't told me was how utterly powerless betrayal makes you feel. Like you're trapped in quicksand, sinking deeper with every breath. I stared up at the stars, whispering to myself, what did I do wrong? Where did I fail her? But another voice, darker, sharper, whispered back, maybe you didn't fail her. Maybe she failed you. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop being her victim. And that, my friends, was the moment I began to see the truth. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a target. My daughter wasn't done draining me yet. And soon, she would deliver the ultimate humiliation that shattered what little dignity I had left. But she forgot one thing. Even an old man has teeth when cornered. I never thought dignity could be stolen in broad daylight. But life has a way of proving us wrong when we least expect it. A month after the confrontation at the dinner table, I received an invitation, hand-delivered in a sleek white envelope with gold lettering. It was for a company gala, my daughter's company. For a brief second, I felt proud. Maybe, just maybe, she wanted to make peace. Maybe this was her way of inviting me back into her life. Mary encouraged me. Go. She wants to show you her world. Maybe things can change. So I wore my best suit, the same one I had worn to her college graduation. I polished my shoes, straightened my tie, and walked into that glittering ballroom with hope tucked stubbornly in my chest. The hall was dazzling. Chandeliers sparkled. Champagne glasses clinked, and men in tailored suits mingled with women in shimmering gowns. My daughter stood at the center of it all, radiant, powerful, confident. For a moment, I thought, that's my girl. I raised her. But then she saw me. Her smile faltered, only for a second, before she slipped into a mask of charm. She approached, kissed me on the cheek like I was some distant relative, and whispered, "Try not to embarrass me tonight." Her words hit harder than any slap, but I swallowed them down. I told myself, not tonight. Tonight, I'll just watch. The speeches began. Executives took the stage, praising the visionary young woman who had transformed the company. They spoke of her brilliance, her bold decisions, her unmatched drive. And then it was her turn. She stepped onto the stage in a crimson gown, her voice clear and commanding. She thanked her team, the investors, the board. Then she paused, scanning the crowd, and with a smile as sharp as a blade, she said, "I wouldn't be here without my mentor, the man who taught me how to fight for what I want, how to never take no for an answer, my biggest investor." Please, everyone, a round of applause for Mr. Jonathan Hale. The crowd clapped, but my blood froze. Jonathan Hale, the slick-haired man, the man she had brought into my house. She didn't mention me. Not once. Not as her father. Not even as the man who emptied his savings for her. Instead, I sat there, invisible, while another man stood and basked in the applause meant for me. I felt the walls closing in. The air turned thick. I wanted to scream. That's my daughter. I built her life. I carried her on my shoulders when she was a child, but my voice was trapped in my throat. When the speech ended, Jonathan Hale joined her on stage. She slipped her arm through his, leaning close as though they were partners, not just in business, but in something more. The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed. I sat in silence, a ghost among the living. Mary leaned over, whispering, "Don't make a scene." But inside, I was breaking. Not just because she erased me from her story, but because in front of hundreds of people, she had replaced me. I wasn't her father anymore. I was nothing. Later that night, As the crowd danced and drank, I retreated to the balcony for air. My hands shook as I lit a cigarette, something I hadn't done in 20 years. And then I heard laughter. I turned, and through the glass doors, I saw my daughter, my flesh and blood, laughing in Jonathan's arms. He whispered something in her ear, and she threw her head back, eyes gleaming. I recognized that look. It wasn't the look of a daughter with her mentor. It was the look of a woman with her lover. My knees nearly gave out. My daughter betrayed me not just as a father, but as a man. She took my money, my name, my sacrifices, and gave her loyalty to him. I left the gala before midnight, unable to bear another second. But humiliation has a way of following you home. The next morning, the local paper carried a photo from the event, my daughter in her crimson gown, her arm around Jonathan Hale. The headline, FinTech's Golden Couple. The future of business. Golden couple. I stared at the photo until the edges blurred. My chest ached, not just with anger, but with shame, because everyone who saw it would know. She didn't just erase me. She replaced me. For weeks, I barely spoke. Mary tried, but her words were empty. She had chosen silence long ago, and silence now was unbearable. One evening, as I sat in my study, I heard voices outside the door. My daughter had come home, unannounced. Curious, I leaned closer. He'll sign it eventually, she was saying. He's too weak to fight me. Just give it time. My heart pounded. Then Jonathan's voice, smooth, confident. And if he doesn't? She laughed softly. Then I'll have him declared incompetent. Old men slip all the time. A few stories about forgetfulness, confusion, maybe even a staged fall. The court will side with me, and then everything will be mine. I froze, every muscle locked in place. Declared incompetent? My own daughter? Jonathan chuckled. You're ruthless. I like that. And then I heard them kiss. That was the moment I realized it wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was war. My daughter wasn't content with my money. She wanted my home, my legacy, my dignity, and she was willing to destroy me to get it. But what she didn't know was that an old man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous man of all. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her words, I'll have him declared incompetent. The court will side with me. Then everything will be mine. Those weren't the words of a daughter. Those were the words of a predator. For 70 years, I lived by one rule. Family comes first. I gave my daughter my youth, my money, my pride. And in return, she was plotting to bury me alive. Not in the ground, but in shame. And that's when I realized, if she wanted war, then war she would get. But it wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be messy. It would be quiet, patient, surgical. Because you see, the advantage of being an old man is that no one suspects you anymore. They think you're weak. They think you've already lost. And that's when you strike. The first step was simple. Watch. I became a shadow in my own house. I listened when she came to visit. I took note of every whisper, every plan. Jonathan Hale was smart, but arrogance makes men sloppy. He left business documents in his briefcase. He spoke on the phone too loudly. And I learned things, dangerous things. His finances weren't as clean as he pretended. Offshore accounts, shady loans, silent partners with questionable pasts. And my daughter, she was his shield, his clean face to the world. Without her, he was vulnerable. Without him, she was lost. I just had to wait for the right crack in their perfect glass castle. But patience alone wasn't enough. I needed allies. That's when I thought of Daniel, my old lawyer, retired now but sharper than any man half his age. He had been with me through every business deal, every contract, every battle in the boardroom. I called him, voice low. Daniel, I need your help, but it has to stay between us. When I told him what my daughter had planned, there was silence on the other end. Then he sighed. I warned you years ago, Frank. Money changes blood. But if she wants to play this game, we'll play it better. For the first time in months, I felt something burning in my chest. Not despair, not anger, but resolve. The second step, protect myself legally. Daniel drew up new documents, airtight, unshakable. My assets, my home, my accounts, all locked under protections that my daughter couldn't touch without my consent. And he filed them quietly, with no trail she could follow. But I didn't stop there. I left her breadcrumbs. Old files, outdated wills, false drafts, just enough to make her believe she was close to getting what she wanted. Because sometimes, the best revenge is letting the enemy walk straight into the trap they think they've built for you. Meanwhile, I began showing small signs of forgetfulness around her, misplacing my glasses, asking her to repeat herself, pretending to nod off during conversations. Her eyes lit up with cruel satisfaction. She thought her plan was working. She didn't know every stumble, every slurred word was an act. Old men know how to play weak, because the world already assumes we are, but as I played my part, the cracks in her world widened. Jonathan Hale wasn't as loyal as she believed. I caught him one night at a hotel downtown with another woman, a blonde, younger than my daughter, laughing in his arms. I snapped a photo, not out of malice, but as insurance, because men like him never settle for one empire. They always want two. I could see it clearly now. He would use her, drain her, then leave her with nothing, just like she planned to do to me. It was almost poetic. Tell me, what would you do if you caught your own daughter plotting to declare you insane, while the man she trusted was secretly betraying her? Would you confront her? Would you expose him? Or would you stay silent and let them both destroy each other? The third step, expose the truth quietly. I met with an old journalist friend. Back in the day, he had covered business scandals, corruption, white-collar crimes. I handed him the files, Jonathan's offshore accounts, his false investors, the photo of his affair. Don't publish yet, I told him. Wait for my word. And when you do, make sure it burns. He grinned. Frank, you always did know how to make a headline. Weeks passed. My daughter visited more often, trying to push me into signing documents. It's just a precaution, Dad. You need to trust me. I would smile weakly, pretending to misunderstand. Is this the paper about my medical checkup? Where do I sign, sweetheart? Her frustration grew. She snapped at me more. She raised her voice. Once, she even grabbed the pen from my hand and tried to shove it toward the paper. I let my hand tremble, eyes wide like a frail old man. But inside, I was smiling, because the more aggressive she became, the more reckless she looked. And soon, she would slip. The final push came sooner than I expected. One night, she brought Jonathan with her. They sat me down in the living room. Paper spread across the table. Jonathan leaned forward, his voice smooth. Frank, this is just for your safety. A guardianship agreement. Nothing changes in your day-to-day life. It just ensures your daughter can handle your affairs if something happens. My daughter added quickly, Dad, it's just a formality. You forget things sometimes. It's better this way. I looked at them both, the predator and her accomplice, and I laughed, not loudly, just a soft, weary chuckle. Jonathan frowned. What's funny? I met his eyes, steady and calm. You two think I'm finished. You think I'm blind. But let me tell you something, a man who has already lost everything has nothing left to fear. Before they could respond, I pulled a folder from my drawer and slid it across the table. Jonathan opened it, his face drained of color. Offshore accounts, fake investors, photos of his affair. My daughter's eyes widened. Dad, what is this? I leaned back in my chair. It's insurance. Insurance that when you two finally turn on each other, and trust me, the whole world will watch it burn. And at that moment, the game changed. They weren't looking at a frail old man anymore. They were looking at the man who had built their world, and who could just as easily tear it down. The night after I laid Jonathan's secrets on the table, silence filled the room like a storm before the lightning. My daughter sat frozen, staring at the evidence, her lips trembling, while Jonathan's polished mask cracked for the first time. Where did you get this? Jonathan whispered. His voice was sharp now, no longer dripping with charm, but trembling with fear. I leaned forward slowly, my eyes steady. I've been in this world long enough to know that everyone hides skeletons. Yours just happened to be louder than most. My daughter finally spoke, her voice shaking. Dad, you're mistaken. Jonathan would never cheat, would never lie, would never use you the same way you used me. I cut in sharply, my voice no longer frail, but filled with steel. For the first time in months, I dropped the act. No more shaking hands, no more stuttering words. My eyes were clear, my back straight, and she saw it. She realized the truth. Her father hadn't been fading. He had been waiting. From that night forward, the cracks between them widened. My daughter started doubting Jonathan. She questioned his late-night meetings, his sudden trips. His phone, he always kept face down. And Jonathan, in return, grew cold, dismissive, like vultures circling the same corpse. Their alliance began to fracture. And I simply fed the fire. Quietly, carefully, whenever my daughter visited, I'd drop small comments. Funny how Jonathan spends so much time at that downtown hotel, isn't it? Whenever Jonathan came, I'd mention her sharp tone. She doesn't seem to trust you much these days. Paranoia is a beautiful weapon. You don't need to swing it. You just place it in their hands and watch them stab each other. If you were in my shoes, would you expose them both in one strike? Or would you let them destroy each other first, slowly, until nothing was left? The final act of my plan began with a single phone call. I rang my journalist friend. It's time, I told him. Run the story. 2 days later, the headlines erupted. Jonathan Hale linked to offshore fraud and secret accounts. Questions rise over Hale's business empire. Mysterious woman spotted. Affair allegations surface. The news spread like wildfire. Investors pulled out. Clients vanished. Jonathan's empire began to crumble overnight. And my daughter? She found herself standing beside a man the world now saw as a criminal and a liar. Her perfect plan, her bright future, gone in the blink of an eye. But karma wasn't finished. Jonathan, desperate and cornered, turned on her. It was her, he shouted at a press conference, his face pale with sweat. She handled the paperwork, the accounts, everything. I was just following her instructions. My daughter gasped on live television, humiliated, betrayed. The man she gave everything to had used her as a shield, and now he was throwing her to the wolves. The image burned itself into my mind. My daughter, once so arrogant, now shaking before the cameras as the world devoured her. And I felt no pity, because betrayal has a price, and she was paying it in full. Tell me, is this justice? To watch your own blood fall, not by your hands, but by the very person they betrayed you for? Or is it too cruel? But I wasn't done. I still needed to make sure she learned, that she understood. So I invited her over one last time. She came, eyes red, makeup smeared, hands trembling. She sat in silence, waiting for me to speak. I poured her a glass of water and set it gently in front of her. You know, I said softly, I once dreamed of giving you everything. The house, the accounts, the legacy I built with my bare hands. You were my pride, my reason for living. Tears welled in her eyes. Dad, I made a mistake. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. My voice cut through the room. You meant every word when you plotted against me. You wanted me weak, broken, forgotten. You wanted to bury me alive. She looked down, shame flooding her face. I leaned closer. Now you know what betrayal feels like. Now you know what it's like to give your life to someone only for them to try and erase you. Her shoulders shook as she began to cry. And for a moment, just one, I felt the faint ache of a father's love again, but was buried too deep under years of loyalty betrayed. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the night. You have nothing now. No Jonathan, no empire, no inheritance. You'll have to start from zero, just like I once did. She whispered, voice broken, Dad, please forgive me. I closed my eyes. Forgiveness is a heavy thing, too heavy for a heart scarred by betrayal. Finally, I turned and spoke the only words I had left for her. Earn it. The weeks that followed were quiet. My daughter disappeared from the public eye. Jonathan was indicted. His name dragged through courts and scandals. His empire shattered. And me? I sat in the garden of my home. The same home I almost lost, watching the sun set on another day. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't even a victor. I was just an old man who refused to be erased. And maybe that's a lesson. Life will always test you, even in your last years. Sometimes a betrayal comes not from strangers, but from the blood you nurtured. And when it does, you have a choice, crumble or fight back. I chose to fight, and I'll let you decide whether I was right. So tell me, if your own child betrayed you like mine did, would you forgive them? Or would you let them drown in the karma they created for themselves? The years have a way of softening even the sharpest storms. After the dust settled, after Jonathan's empire turned to ash and my daughter's illusions crumbled before her very eyes, the house returned to silence. But silence has two faces. One is peace. The other is loneliness. And in that silence, I found myself asking questions I had buried beneath my vengeance. Had I truly won? Or had I simply survived? I'd sit on the porch each evening, my old rocking chair creaking beneath my weight, watching the sky paint itself in shades of orange and violet. The same sunsets I once admired with my little girl, when she was no older than 5. I remember how she used to climb onto my lap, pointing at the clouds. "That one looks like a horse, Daddy," she laughed. Those memories burned brighter now that everything else had burned away. And sometimes I wondered if I had gone too far. If your own blood turned against you, would you strike them down with the same fury I did? Or would you hold on to the memories of who they used to be? My daughter eventually came back, months after Jonathan's downfall. She didn't come dressed in pride or arrogance this time. She came in humility, worn clothes, a tired face, the kind of look only true suffering can carve into a person. She stood in the doorway, hesitant like a stranger. "Dad," she whispered, "I don't have anywhere else to go." For a long moment, I said nothing. I just looked at her, my daughter who had betrayed me, plotted against me, wished me gone. But I also saw the little girl who once ran through this garden barefoot, chasing butterflies. And my heart twisted between love and anger, between forgiveness and punishment. I stepped aside. "Come in." Her recovery was not instant. She lived here quietly, helping with the garden, cooking meals, cleaning the very house she once thought she'd inherit without lifting a finger. There were no grand speeches, no tearful apologies that erased the past. Instead, there was quiet work, day after day, and slowly I began to see change. She was learning the lesson the hard way, that life gives nothing freely, and betrayal always comes back like a shadow. And me? I found myself softening too, because in the end, revenge is fire. It burns bright, but it cannot warm you forever. At some point, you either put out the flame or let it consume you. What do you think? Is true revenge letting them suffer alone, or giving them a chance to rebuild under your watch? One evening, she sat across from me, hands trembling as she held her tea. "Dad," she finally said, voice cracking, "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll earn it if you let me." Her words hit me harder than any betrayal ever had, because they were honest, and maybe that was enough. I didn't say, "I forgive you." The wound was too deep for simple words. But I nodded. "Then prove it, not to me, but to yourself." She cried silently that night, tears streaming down her cheeks as though a dam had finally broken. The world outside still knew her as Jonathan's accomplice. Some neighbors whispered, some turned away. But in here, under this roof, she was simply my daughter again, flawed, broken, but trying. And I realized something that perhaps only age can teach you. Revenge is satisfying, but redemption is eternal. If your child came back to you after destroying your trust, would you give them another chance, or would you close the door forever? As the seasons passed, I grew older, weaker, but my spirit was stronger than had been in years, because I had not let betrayal bury me. I had risen, struck back, and forced karma to do its work. But I also learned that vengeance, no matter how sweet, is never the end of the story. The true end is what comes after. The rebuilding, the lessons passed down, the choice to carry bitterness or to plant forgiveness. And that choice, that's where our legacy truly lies. Now, as I sit here writing these words, I think about all the fathers, all the grandfathers out there, working their final years, dreaming of peace and retirement. Let me tell you this. Be careful who you trust, even those closest to you. Protect what you've built. But also, do not let bitterness be the last chapter of your story. Because in the end, our children, even when they fail us, are still a part of us. And the greatest revenge of all is to live long enough to see them learn. So I ask you, watching this now, what would you do if your own child betrayed you? Would you fight back with fire? Or would you let life itself teach them the lesson they deserve?